On today's RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, Anthony Servino and I will break down quarterback tiers by ADP. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, and we're sponsored by Circa Resort and Casino. I'm Jim Coventry. I'm joined, as always, by Anthony Servino. Anthony, today we're breaking down the 2025 Fantasy Football quarterbacks, then tiers. We're going to base that on ADPs. But first, let's get looking at a few season-long player props to bet on. While doing this, we're going to use that RotoWire picks tool. This comes with any RotoWire subscription. I'll tell you later how you can get a discount on that subscription, but this is some real actionable advice that we can work with here. Anthony, as you navigate the picks tool, which can be found again on the RotoWire website, we're going to look at four players. These are bets that we will talk through for you. And we're going to point out Josh Allen first. Josh Allen, we have him at less than 3,800 passing yards on Underdog. Anthony will point out in a moment the different sites that are on there so you can mix and match. You're going to be able to find the best price. But let's talk about Josh Allen for a minute. Josh Allen was 29 yards less than that 3,800 last year. So that was kind of like a really, really close one. But I want to point this out as well. Joe Brady took this offense over in the second half of 2023. Josh Allen in 2023, when Brady took over, averaged 211 yards per game. And over the last 24 games now, Allen is averaging 219 yards. His 17-game pace is 37-24. Now, it's not like this huge bet of the century one, but in this offense, Allen is not a big-time passer. He's a big-time runner. Anthony, point out a few things about the picks tool and talk about Josh Allen.
Yeah, so when it comes to this picks tool, you can get everything from sports books to pick'em apps like Sleeper, Underdog, DraftKings Pick 6, Prize Picks. We have it all here. Top sports books like BetMGM, Caesar Sportsbook, FanDuel, Hard Rock, everything. Now, as you can see, using this picks and props tool, you could filter different things out. What I did to make things easier, you go to the NFL tab and you just type in Allen, and it will filter all of the Josh Allen bets that you can make. Rushing yards, passing touchdowns, passing yards, rushing touchdowns. So you can look at all the different Josh Allen plays here.
So, Anthony, we're going to show you how this site really benefits you in making a bet when you're looking for disparities across books and numbers. So we're going to look at Lamar Jackson now. And as Anthony pulls up Lamar Jackson, I love him to go more than 3,300.5 yards. You could get that bet at Bet Caesars. Now, here's where we play the books, right? Well, if you go to Underdog, Jackson's yardage prop is 174 yards higher. So if you want to go with more, well, certainly you find the book on the RotoWire picks tool that shows you 3,300 yards. Lamar Jackson has played 2 years with Todd Monken. He only attempts 465 passes per year, but he has had 3,678 yards. He's had 4,172. He has shattered 3,300. He's had a career high pass yards per attempt, 8 and 8.8 the last 2 years. I don't care how few passes that Lamar Jackson throws, Anthony. He's going over this.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Josh, this is a good bet for Lamar Jackson to go over. And once you open up the actual bet, you will see how all of the sports books and pick'em sites that offer this bet, where their lines and our projections are. As you can see, Prize Picks 33.99.5, Underdog 34.74.5, and then you get into the sports books 3,300.5, 34.50.5, 34.50.5, and the best bet that you can make if you want the over would be the 3,300.5 at Caesars, as Jim said. Now, if you wanted to go under, you don't want to stay at Caesars. Then you would make that play at Underdog, because that is the highest yardage total, which is 34, 74, 50. So if you want the over, you go to Caesars. If you want the under, you go to Underdog. And you'll see down here the RotoWire projection. Well, we have him projected at 3,619 yards. So the best play would be the over.
Yes, Anthony, as a bettor, I don't have time on my own to shop every site, look up every player. This does it for you. So if you're going to be betting, this tool is one you want. Let's do two more. These are fantasy bets. These are things that are going to help us that wise. We'll get to the quarterback tiers in a bit, but Patrick Mahomes, more than 3,900 passing yards. That's at Bet Caesars. But again, we have a 174-yard discrepancy with Underdog. Underdog has Mahomes pushed all the way to 4,074. So if I want to go more, and in the last 2 years, Mahomes has gone more than that, 39-28, 41-83. Look, Xavier Worthy, he didn't really break out till the second half of last year. He's back. Hollywood Brown should be healthy. We're not sure about Rashee Rice's suspension, but at least we know he'll be healthy. Jalen Royals is in here. I fully expect Mahomes to continue to go over that 3,900-yard mark. Anthony?
Yeah, in addition to those players you just mentioned, there's a newcomer to running back room, Brashard Smith, one of the best receiving backs coming out. I think he could be an added weapon for this offense and also to help Mahomes hit that over. And like I said earlier, you open up this actual play, you'll see the Patrick Mahomes, where the different pick'em sites and sports books have it. And just to give you that alternative, if you did want to take an under on this, then your best bet would be, once again, at Underdog. They're the highest yardage total projection at 4,074.5 yards. So again, the over, Caesars, under at Underdog, and our projection, 4,231 yards.
You know, Anthony, for fantasy, everybody, you brought up Brashard Smith. I was on a show on Player Profiler with Matt Kelly, and Matt Kelly hit the nail on the head. Brashard Smith has a great chance to take on that Jerick McKinnon role of a few years ago. If he develops into that quickly, and again, Andy Reid's not an easy coach to learn his offense right away, but if Brashard Smith picks that up, you are correct. We could be looking at the Jerick McKinnon role. And in a PPR league, that's definitely running back 4 value late in drafts. Let's do one more quarterback for betting before we get to the tiers. Caleb Williams, more than 3,350 passing yards. Now, you could get that number on 2 sites. 3,350 you can get at Bet Caesars. You can get at Prize Picks. Now, if you don't want to go to Underdog, because he's 149 yards more there at 34.99. That's not a good bet. But here, over more than 3,350. Even last year, it was a disaster for Caleb Williams. He had 3,541 yards. He blew that number away. Now Ben Johnson's in. The offensive line upgraded. Colston Loveland is in. Year 2 of Rome Odunze. DJ Moore should get re-weaponized. So all that said, this is a smash for me, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely love the over here. All the added weapons, the new offensive-minded play caller, head coach. This is an absolute no-brainer bet to take the over on the Caleb Williams passing yards prop. I'm a 100% agreement with this one. And in fantasy, he's one of the best quarterbacks that could potentially break out this season.
And we'll be talking about him in the quarterback tiers, which is starting in just a couple moments. But hey, if you want to cash those betting tickets, get that RotoWire picks tool we just showed you. It's included in your RotoWire subscription, and we'll get you 15% off. Just use the code ROTO15, ROTO15 at checkout, and you'll have access to that tool. You'll make that money over like a snap of a finger. Anthony, quarterback ADP tiers. It's a very clear 2-player tier at the top. There is going to be a 1A later, but pretty much Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, they're the top 2 taken. We'll talk about Jayden Daniels later. He'll go a little after. But if you want one of these quarterbacks, you usually got to go the 3rd round to get them. Josh Allen, we said this earlier. Joe Brady took over mid-2023. This is a more balanced offense than ever. Allen's passing attempts, they used to be in the 590 range. Anthony, they're down over 100 pass attempts. So that's not positive. What has worked for Josh Allen is the rushing touchdowns. The rushing touchdowns have gone through the roof because his passing touchdowns have gone from about 36 to 28, but he has just been running it in. It used to be 6 to 9 touchdowns a season. He has 27 the last 2 seasons. Now, note his rushing yards have gone way down. Again, he used to be 762 a season. He's down to 528. So here's the only concern with Josh Allen at the quarterback one. If those touchdowns go back to the 6 range from the 12 to 14 range, we know the passing's down because the attempts aren't there. That's the only concern. Josh Allen is, again, superstar fantasy quarterback. But that's the one thing. If he cannot afford to lose more rushing touchdowns. Thoughts on Josh Allen at the number 1?
Yeah, he should be the overall 101. He's been cashing that ticket year over year right now. But I think we've said this now the past 2 years we're doing shows together. At some point, we're going to see some deterioration in the body, which is going to lead into that fantasy production. Are they ever going to tone down the rushing for Josh Allen and maybe use other guys like Ray Davis? They did bring in a guy like another pass catcher like a Joshua Palmer. At some point, we are going to see the rushing usage of Josh Allen go down. And if it happens this year, then yeah, I'm a little bit worried about him finishing as the overall quarterback 1.
In the next part of this quarterback 1 overall tier, you got Lamar Jackson. Some drafts he'll go first. Allen still is ahead of him overall, but that'll flip. So they're their own 2-player tier. Now, I noted earlier in the betting section for Lamar Jackson, his yards per attempt the last 2 years, career highs, 8.8 and 8. So that's been 2 massive moves upward for him. The durability has been very good last year. 17 games is the first time since 2019. But the 1 year he had COVID, I know that was like not really much of a thing, but at least he was durable last year. And in all 5 seasons that he's played 15 games, he's had at least 138 to 176 rushing attempts. So we know the running's going to be there. Now, the touchdowns, here's the one thing to worry about. He threw 41 touchdowns on only 474 attempts. That efficiency is through the roof, ridiculous. I don't know if that's repeatable, but the rushing yardage, Anthony, this is going to be a problem for defenses because we saw this late last season. When Lamar went into the shotgun, this was like week 11 on, defenses would start to run at Derrick Henry, and as soon as they did, Lamar just tucked the ball, and there was so much room for him to run. So I think he could have a massive rushing season and still have good, strong passing numbers. Thoughts on Lamar?
Yeah, I'm all in on Lamar. I think when it's all said and done, I might have Lamar Jackson ranked as my number 1 overall quarterback ahead of Josh Allen.
Yep.
You talk about the efficiency. We saw the guys like Rashad Bateman and also Mark Andrews super efficient when it comes to touchdown receptions. Yes, it is hard to maintain, but at the same time, as long as you have a healthy Derrick Henry and a healthy Lamar Jackson in that backfield, I think those layup touchdowns when it comes to throwing the football are still going to be there.
So now this is the clear 2-man tier. Like you said, I do have Jackson ahead of Allen, but it's splitting hairs. Whatever your flavor is, go with it. Football fans, why settle for your buddy's basement when you can draft in Las Vegas? The Circa Resort and Casino is giving one league the ultimate fantasy football experience. You get a 2-night stay, a welcome bash at the Legacy Club, and you're drafted a private stadium swim cabana with giant screens, DJs, the whole vibe. Plus, you get limo service and your own spot at the world's biggest sports book. You have to be 21 or over to enter. Head to circalasvegas.com for all the info. This year, make your draft unforgettable only at Circa. Anthony, Jayden Daniels is his own micro tier 1A. You're able to get him after Jackson and Allen, but you don't want to get him. You're not going to be able to wait till the 5th round. You're going to probably go 4th round in most 12-team leagues to get Daniels. And we saw it. The elite dual threat ran for 891 yards. Those are insane rushing numbers. Deep ball accuracy, 92nd percentile. We love that. He had at least 8 games with 50 rushing yards. I want to point this out, Anthony. There were times late in the season, played the Steelers, the second time against the Eagles, or the first time against the Eagles. The first time against the Eagles, he struggled. Now, that second time against the Eagles was that crazy game where Jalen Hurts got hurt. The game went off the rails. But even in the playoffs, we saw the Eagles. They pretty much, shut him down. So I'm a little concerned there. And my other problem is this. Look, he is still 6'4", like 210. He's tiny. And if he's going to keep running, quarterbacks of that size, I just don't see them holding up. I don't discourage anybody from drafting Daniels here. I am not placing my bet on a guy who's going to run that much of that size to continue holding up. I will bet against durability of somebody that size every year. Maybe that's just me. They gave him the weapons. They gave him the line. I love all that. Anthony, where do you stand on Jayden Daniels?
I get where you're coming from. Jayden Daniels should be the third quarterback off the board. They added offensive line help, as you said. They added Deebo Samuel. But last year, is that more of an outlier? And what I mean by outlier, if you look at his injury report last year, 2 injury reports he appeared on with a rib injury that began in week 7. You mentioned his size. Are we going to see him a little bit more dinged up? He doesn't exactly have to miss full games for Jayden Daniels to have an impact on the fantasy score when it comes to injury. He can miss a half a game, and all of a sudden you're getting half a production that week. So I do have some red flags here when it comes to Jayden Daniels and that potential injury history or lack thereof yet.
So that said, if I'm going to repeat this, if you go in on Jayden Daniels, go in on him. Look, we can't dispute the ceiling. The ceiling is insane. But just understand that size and durability. That's a very, very, like Anthony said, a red flag to be cautious of. We are going to talk more quarterback tiers after we take a short break. All right, Jalen Hurts is in tier 2 with Joe Burrow. Here's the one thing. We're recording this on Monday, May 12th. The NFL still has some meetings set up in May, and they tabled the tush push discussion for later in May. So it's not a done deal that it's back or it's gone. We don't know. It's uncertain. And I think that decision as of today means a lot, because if there is steam to ban it, that's going to take a lot of touchdowns away from Jalen Hurts, because they're going to hand it to Barkley instead of, making Hurts just a designed run without the tush push. That said, Hurts has been a dynamic runner. Passing numbers, they've been down the last couple of years because they don't pass as much. Hurts has some limitations. He has great receivers, but the rushing production has been insane. Again, 630 yards, 15 touchdowns. That wasn't the 2021, 2022 peak, but it's been the new norm, and you can't argue with that. He always gets you a high floor, at least 16.9 points per game. He had 7 games at least 25. All that said, I am a little bit concerned with Jalen Hurts as that quarterback 4. There's a little bit of durability I get concerned about. There's concerns about, the tush was being taken away as of this recording. What are your thoughts on Hurts?
I'm with you here. I am not going to have Jalen Hurts ranked as my quarterback 4. I actually, we'll talk about him next. Joe Burrow, he's my guy as a fourth quarterback off the board. But when it comes to Jalen Hurts, it's not just the tush push being taken off. There's still the presence of Saquon Barkley, and maybe the Philadelphia Eagles, they'll realize at some point, just like we talked about Jayden Daniels and like we talk about with other guys, we want to prolong this potential dynasty. The way we prolong that is maybe we don't, have Jalen Hurts rush that many times with the tush push, because that is still a physical and brutal play on your body. Maybe we give it to our workhorse, Saquon Barkley, on the 1-yard line like most other teams would. So that's the other factor we have to think about as Jalen Hurts is entering his age 27 season.
Next, and you and I have already kind of gone here, we have Burrow ahead of Jalen Hurts. So Joe Burrow is next. He's our next quarterback. He's in this tier 2 of quarterbacks. You have to draft him and Jalen Hurts in about the same area. Usually that's late 4th, early 5th in your 12-team leagues. Of course, it varies every league, of course. Burrow, oh my goodness, 2024, 4,918 yards, 43 touchdowns, cut his interceptions down to 9. That's even more profound. And here's the thing. He attempted a ton of passes, way more than his career year back in 2021. He had 7 300-yard games. That defense is going to continue to be awful. You've got Chase, you got Higgins, both are paid and they're happy. Mike Gesicki, probably that slot receiver, tight end, but just having those 2 receivers. And we know what that defense, like we said, Burrow's going to have to throw every week. I just don't see a lot of downside. He gets the ball out quickly, so hopefully he's able to continue being healthy. Earlier in his career, he struggled with health a bit. Anthony, Joe Burrow.
I'm all in on Joe Burrow, and I get there's a little bit of risk. There's a little bit of an injury risk if you go back into his career. But since 2021, he's played in at least 16 games in 3 out of the past 4 seasons, and full 17 in 2 out of his past 3. They have to throw the football to win football games, to stay in football games. They're trailing. And they also have Chase Brown, who's a prolific receiver out of the backfield. They have weapons all over the place. And as long as Joe Burrow is on the football field, it is hard to stop this guy. And he's put up big time numbers on some really good defenses. I think he's matchup proof. You put him out there no matter what. And doesn't have a lot of rushing upside, but last year he still ran the ball for a handful of touchdowns, which also adds to that to that fantasy total. So Joe Burrow, I have him ranked as my quarterback 4, and last year quarterback 3 in points per game, and overall they're bringing back all of his weapons. So yeah, this is an all-in play for me, and I'm willing to overpay for this guy.
Yeah, no doubt. As we're talking quarterbacks, a question did come in about how much work does Taj Brooks take from Chase Brown. It's difficult now. 6th round pick, not a lot of draft capital, but he's a big back. And we know the coaching staff, they want to lessen Chase Brown's work a bit. So I do think, look, Zach Moss, don't know, he wasn't effective. And I get some people were saying he was injured. The reports were he wasn't. He lost basically as usual. He starts out great, and then he always scales down. He had lost his job, and then he got injured and lost it permanently. So that said, I do think they're going to give some work. Now, here's the problem. It could be goal line work, because if you want to save Chase Brown a lot of durability stuff, then yeah, you give away 5 to 8 between the 20s carries, but you also might want to consider giveaways from that goal line stuff. So again, we're talking quarterbacks. I do think he gets some work from Chase Brown, but I don't think enough to keep him out of that borderline running back 1 tier. Anthony, thoughts?
No, I'm still buying into Chase Brown. I get they brought back P. Ryan, they drafted Taj Brooks, but once Chase Brown was unlocked last year, he was performing as one of the better fantasy backs. I know that doesn't matter quite for the NFL, but Chase Brown was also very reliable, and being a reliable player, especially as a pass catcher in this offense. You have to remember, this offensive line isn't great, and Joe Burrow, when he has to check that ball down to, you could do a lot worse than Chase Brown, because he's a really, really good playmaker, once he has that ball in his hands.
We'll move to tier 3 of the quarterbacks. And this year, that tier 3 is made up of Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield. You're usually looking at a 12-team league, about a 6th round pick. Occasionally, depending on the competitiveness of the league, you might see one of them dip into the 7th. But this is a clear tier. Mahomes is ahead of Mayfield in that tier. And the whole thing is, Patrick Mahomes, because of who he is always going to have the highest possible ADP. But it is very hard to justify him here, because he has not passed for more than 27 touchdowns in 2 straight seasons. He has not hit 4,200 yards in those 2 seasons. But remember, we were commonly seeing an average of about 40 touchdowns and 4,800 yards from 2020 to 2022. But this is not the same Patrick Mahomes. Now, we keep saying, yes, they're bringing people in. We're expecting them to have more weapons, stress the defenses, more Mahomes. But at this point, Anthony, and I know last year injuries were probably why it was what it was, but at this point, we have a 2-year sample. And they're happy taking what the defense gives them. And if that means run the ball, fine. If it means short passes, fine. If they play with a lead, they're not going to go crazy with it. Mahomes has won 30-point fantasy game since 2023. I cannot take him at quarterback 6. He has not been a quarterback 1 in over a season and a half. I can't do that.
Yeah, when it comes to points per game, back-to-back years, top 11, top 10, and we were paying much higher prices. Still a hefty price when you look at the quarterbacks going around Patrick Mahomes, the Bo Nixes of the world, the Baker Mayfields of the world, and especially the rate that they throw in Tampa Bay. This is a hard pill to swallow. Now, there's that part in the back of my head that remembers that, and I get Philly probably had their 4th stringers in on defense, but that deep throw to, I believe, Xavier Worthy to end that game. It's been a long time since we saw a pretty Patrick Mahomes deep ball that hits. And last year I was all in on Mahomes, and we didn't expect the Rice injury, the Hollywood Brown injury. This could be the year where it happens. I just don't know if I'm willing to bite that bullet. on this could be, because I've been saying that now for 3 years, 2 years.
Exactly. So, like I said, I mean, that's no shade on Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And we're hopeful everything works out for him situationally, but it's been a while now. And to make that bet, it's betting on fantasy production that we haven't seen recently. So I'm not going there. So next is Baker Mayfield. He's the last player in this third tier, and he is really the value. He often slips into that 7th round of 12-team leagues. And to me, if you can't stomach taking a quarterback early, this is your bridge. This is the one that you can get if you don't want to take the risk of players later. And there's some huge upside later. But if you want the best blend, I think, of safe floor and upside, I think it's got to be Baker Mayfield. Now, do we like that Liam Cohen's gone? No, we don't like that. But Mayfield has been good the last 2 years in Tampa. And why wouldn't he be? He has Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is expected to be a full go for camp off the dislocated ankle. It wasn't an ACL. It wasn't something like that. So it sounds like he's going to be back to normal. Jalen McMillan came on. You bring in the rookie, oh my gosh, Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah.
And you have Cade Otton in there. You could throw to Bucky Irving or even Rashad White. Mayfield ran last year, 378 yards. When defenses put the shell over the top and said, all right, we're going to stop this, Mayfield just took off, and he was really, really good as a runner. So Josh Grizzard comes in to coach the offense, and yes, he was on the staff. But that said, I never think the new coach is going to do what the old coach did. We always want to think that happens. That usually doesn't work. But I think that realistically, Mayfield just has the weapons, and good luck stopping them. And that defense, they're going to give up points. There's going to be shootouts. Anthony.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield across the board last season, career highs, yards per attempt, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, touchdown. No matter where you look, it was career high for Baker Mayfield. I'm expecting much of the same. As you said, they're going to have to throw the ball. And what's great about this Tampa team, and we saw this a little bit last year, if they do catch the injury bug like they did with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they were still hard to stop. Even though it was a little bit of a bumpy road for Jalen McMillan early, Cade Otton stepped up. Rashad White, they have depth. They're 3 deep at running back. The only place that I would say that they're not really deep at is that tight end. But everywhere else, so even if Baker Mayfield, almost, let's say they suffer another, like Patrick Mahomes last year, you lose your 2 top receivers, things don't go really well. That happens to Baker Mayfield. We saw what happened last year. He still put up monster numbers, and they have even more depth with Egbuka now.
Remember, before we get to tier 4, we're offering 15% off all RotoWire products and subscriptions. You just go to rotowire.com, pick out that subscription. You use ROTO15 as the code, ROTO15, to score your 15% discount. You use that code at checkout. Anthony, we go to, remember, get that picks tool that we showed you earlier in the show. Make a lot of money using that picks tool, and it shops the books for you. That's definitely the place to go. Tier 4. Now, this is going to be a very polarizing one. I know we had a message up in the chat earlier how we have people in on Bo Nix. Nix was great last year. Can't argue with anything he did. 3,775 passing yards, 29 touchdowns. He ran for 430 and 4 touchdowns. It was a very beautiful season. And the slow start, acclimating to the league, there was a lot more cautiousness in play calling. Man, Bo Nix had 25-point games 3 times in his last 7. So he showed growth there. But here are where my concerns lie. This team could not run the ball to save their lives last year. Javonte Williams, running in mud. And Jaleel McLaughlin, not good. Audric Estime, inefficient. Sean Payton wants to run the football, and they want to play defense. They added 3 big pieces on defense in the offseason. This was a great defense. This projects to be better. Well, they can run the ball this year, most likely. R.J. Harvey. Was it the running back I thought they'd get? No. But they still spent a premium pick on R.J. Harvey. And if Sean Payton gets what he wants, this team is running the ball a lot. They're passing when they need to. And that's my concern with Bo Nix. Bo Nix ran because he had to run last year. Bo Nix passed because he had to pass last year. This is not a knock on Bo Nix. This is Sean Payton's going to have his offense this year. Now, Nix will be very efficient on the chances he gets. Yes. But I think drafting him at running back 8, I think that's drafting on last year. I think his situation is patently different this year. Where do you stand on Bo Nix, Anthony?
Now, I agree here. They brought in Harvey. Peyton wants to run the ball. He's going to run the ball. Harvey can catch out of the backfield. That's going to eat away at Bo Nix a little bit. But they also did bring in some receiving help with Evan Ingram. We're expecting a little bit more out of Marvin Mims. All that being said, when I look at these passing opportunity numbers, 6th most passing attempts, I don't know if we're going to see that again. If you take away those attempts, then we're going to be betting on a hyper-efficient version of Bo Nix. Not saying he can't do it, but he doesn't exactly have, let's say Baker Mayfield, if he wasn't throwing, like, he could be hyper efficient with those weapons. We could see Jalen Hurts be hyper efficient with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. I just don't know if Bo Nix has the cast around him to lose some attempts and also expect that same passing production. And this is also like almost of a teardrop for me, to where if I want to bite the bullet and draft Bo Nix, I'll wait a round or two and go get my guy Justin Fields.
Yeah, and we'll talk about him a little bit later as well. And, when we further go on this, I mentioned the defense earlier. This is a team in Denver last year. As good as their defense was, they were trailing in a good number of games down the stretch last year. There's a chance that this team, in the majority of their games, is playing with a lead in the fourth quarter. They're not passing in those games. Yeah. Their offensive line is outstanding. They're going to grind the game out when they're winning. And so, again, it's a further knock. We did have a question quickly on Pat Bryant, the third round 10th pick. Here's what I'll say. Cortland Sutton is the clear number 1. Marvin Mims is the clear number 2. Evan Ingram, the tight end, will be using the joker role. He's the clear number 3. The passing attempts are going to go way down. Pat Bryant has a chance to mix in here for sure. Devon Vele may get phased out here, which is fine if he does. But if they need him in the slot, then that's probably not where Pat Bryant's going. So Sean Payton likes Pat Bryant. I know he capped him in a way to Michael Thomas, I believe. I don't think this year it happens. I think if Cortland Sutton, they move on from him soon, I think Bryant may be a more factor. I don't think there's room for him in this offense. Anthony?
Yeah, I think if you want to take your shots, depending on where his price is on best ball, if you want to take your shots in dynasty, thinking with the long-term view, fine. Mm-hmm. But in terms of redraft, I don't think he's a player on my radar. Obviously you watch him, you put him on, if your league has a waiver wire watch setting, yep. You click that button, you watch him and watch his numbers as we go on to the season. But I don't think he's a guy you want to draft in your standard redraft leagues.
Funny you say that, because I was just tweaking my write-ups post-draft, and for Pat Bryant, I put don't draft him because he'll be undrafted in most leagues. But like I said, you said keep him on your waiver wire speed dial, because as soon as you see something, pounce. Yeah, even if it's a little glimmer, go ahead and do that. All right, one more player in tier 4 with Bo Nix is Kyler Murray. At least Murray played 17 games last year. There's that first time since 2020, and man, he turned it up on the rushing. 572 yards and 5 touchdowns. But honestly, did he really turn it up? When he's healthy on a per-game basis, that's pretty much what you're getting from him. That's very good rushing production. It's not Lamar Jackson. It's not Jayden Daniels, but it's a real nice number. And last year, only 21 touchdown passes. That was a problem, 11 picks. Kyler Murray, in a good career, again, he's missed time. He's never thrown for 4,000 yards. He's never thrown for more than 26 touchdowns. So that really caps his upside. And we are hoping to get a year 2 jump from Marvin Harrison. They used Harrison poorly last year. Too many deep routes. They never consistently would get him the ball in space, let him create, and move the offense. Trey McBride was their number 1 receiver. 143 targets, I believe. It was 119 for Harrison. If they decide to unlock Harrison, that helps Kyler Murray. But that said, the overall durability, aside from last year, has been an issue. This year, I'm not excited about Murray at this cost. Other years, yes. I'm not excited at this cost. Thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot more competition at the position this year, which can also drive down price. But if you look, yes, injuries are 100% a concern. Last year was one of his worst years, if not his worst year, when it comes to a point per game average. He still finished as a quarterback 12. So even if you do take Kyler here, you're basically drafting him at his floor. And he always has that Kyler Murray ceiling in him from a few years ago, where he can finish at a top 5 in point per game. He has the weapons to get there. It's just a matter of, are they going to use this offense and these skill position players the right way to get there?
Let's go to tier 5, and then we'll go with some other players outside these tiers. Tier 5, pretty much your quarterback 10 range. Caleb Williams and Justin Fields both go around there. And this could be a flavor for either, depending what you like. I like Caleb Williams, and I know Anthony likes Justin Fields. We'll make cases for both. Caleb Williams, look, I say you have to throw a lot of what you saw last year away. The biggest problem in Chicago is that interior offensive line. Not only didn't they play well, they were not coached to pick up what we call phantom pressures, disguise pressures. They never saw anything coming in. People were in the backfield at the snap. Caleb Williams never had a chance. 68 sacks, I believe. It was the second most that we've seen. It was a lot of sacks for Caleb Williams. And he was on the run, and it was a problem. And then the offensive play calling was even worse. It was like Keenan Allen was often like the number one. DJ Moore was seeing these bubble screens and nothing more. Rome Odunze was very poorly used. It could not have been more of a disaster. Yet Caleb Williams still throws for 34, 51, and 20 touchdowns. He ran for 489, didn't rush for a touchdown. So he can run. We saw flashes. But here's the thing. The offensive line is fixed. And it was fixed well. Ben Johnson's in. Maybe he was a one-trick pony in Detroit, but he's got talent there. Bears bring in Colston Loveland. They bring in Luther Burden, which I'm not scooper sky on, but they have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. The Bears defense, I don't think is going to be better than average. I think it might even be that. The Bears are going to have to throw. I believe what we saw from Caleb Johnson was a joke last year. I believe the real deal is this year. I believe he's good. I believe he has top 6 upside. I like him. How do you see him, Anthony?
At the lead, you said you like Williams. I like Fields. I like both a lot. I'm buying into both.
Same.
Which is why, a lot of terrific quarterbacks early, but I see myself walking out with a lot of Joe Burrow and then just waiting because the quarterback this year is so deep. Fields, Caleb Williams, guys we'll talk about later. Dak's back on the rise. But Caleb Williams, he had the opportunity to be special. 7th in attempts, 1st in deep attempts, top 12 in the red zone. They threw the 10th most pass plays per game. Something was off. I think it was the offensive coordinator. Just something seemed broken in that offense last year, which is why they went out and got Ben Johnson. And if you give Caleb Williams this type of opportunity in a Ben Johnson-led offense with the upgraded offensive line and with the upgraded skill position players, we could be potentially looking at, with his skill set, top 5 ceiling.
Agreed. And, it's funny you said that, I'm in on both. We can only get one in drafts. That's the thing. Yeah. So, but that said, in on Caleb Williams. Let's move to Justin Fields. Don't forget that Justin Fields ran for 1,143 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2022. That was not long ago. All right. Understand, he has that level of talent. Last year in Pittsburgh, they used him on safe runs. They did not design those runs for these big, monstrous gains. They wanted him to keep the ball protected because he has a fumbling problem. All right. He has almost 1 fumble per game in his career. Now, he hasn't lost all of them, but it's like 1 fumble per game. And with the interceptions, it's basically 1.5 bad plays per game, be it a fumble or an actual interception. So that's a problem. But you cannot question his ability to run. And I think in New York with the Jets, he's going to be weaponized as a runner. Breece Hall in the backfield only helps him. Garrett Wilson at receiver and the new tight end. Oh, my God, Mason Taylor. This is a great setup because remember, Justin Fields and Cole Kmet connected for like 719 yards, and I believe 6 touchdowns a couple of years ago. So Fields is good at finding a good middle of the field tight end. So overall, Fields for NFL, maybe not so good. There'll be the turnovers. For fantasy, Anthony, the sky is the limit here.
Yeah, Justin Fields, another one of my all-in guys at quarterback. And body of work fantasy-wise, he's been outstanding. And if you look at the years where he's played at least 13 games, we have a quarterback 9 point per game, quarterback 5 back in 2020 in point per game. Last year in those early games, he was also hyper-productive, and obviously he lost his job to Russell Wilson. Now you go to New York. I think we need to look at it this way. He's on a reasonable contract, and Justin Fields probably knows this might be my last shot to go be an NFL starter. So you have that in your favor. Tanner Engstrom coming from the Detroit Lions, a play caller who wants to scheme the ball in his playmaker's hands. Well, it's arguably Justin Fields with his legs might be one of the best playmakers in the NFL. They have capable weapons, stud weapons when it comes to Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So you have a lot of things working in favor of Justin Fields. I don't know how he is as an NFL quarterback. It doesn't look great. But in terms of fantasy, like I said about Caleb Williams, if the stars align for Justin Fields, you're drafting a guy in your time, as a quarterback 12 who could finish as a top 5 quarterback very easily.
So Williams and Fields in his 5th tier.
Yep.
Again, if you want to wait, those are your targets because they both have big upside. If you're worried about the floor being a problem, then draft one of the quarterbacks we're going to talk about a little later in the show, pair them with them, and then maybe have a backup option. Remember, be a part of the RotoWire community on our new and improved Discord server. You can share fantasy advice, find prop best detail, interact with some of your favorite RotoWire experts. Just join the conversation at rotowire.com/chat. Anthony, no tiers now, some interesting ADPs. The first one's Jared Goff. And honestly, it's all over the board depending which draft you're in. You'll see him in some drafts go as quarterback 8. You'll see him go as quarterback 14 in other drafts. So he's not one of those that's like in a specific tier. His overall average is about QB 12. But here's the thing. Last year, the numbers were great. 4,629 yards, 37 touchdowns. It was his 3rd straight years with at least 4,400 yards and 29 touchdowns. So it has been phenomenal. And he had 6 games at least 26 fantasy points. Here's the thing, Anthony. Weeks 3 through 7 last year, Detroit's defense was playing the way they wanted it to. They were playing great. Goff was attempting about 25 passes a game. Now, in a few of those games, he was able to get by on heavy touchdowns and low yardage, but that wasn't every game in there. And the problem is that Detroit lost 18 people to injured reserve. This year, that run of bad luck and health, that's not happening again. That was like an outlier of all historical outliers. If this defense is good all year, we've seen the blueprint. I know Ben Johnson's gone, but they don't want to throw the ball. They want to run with Gibbs and Montgomery and throw only when they have to. And I'm nervous because Jared Goff could do really well here, but I'm also worried he loses Ben Johnson because remember, Jared Goff got run out by Sean McVay because he couldn't run McVay's offense to the way it was supposed to be run. Ben Johnson perfectly found an offense, and you can't expect that the continuation of coaching is going to bring about the same result. The play calling, that's all something to think about. I don't want a part of Jared Goff this year because I think they're going to run the ball a ton. Anthony?
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up the splits. I have a split weeks 1 and 9, just over 19 points per game. Week 10 to 18, just over 26 points per game. Tale of 2 players, tale of 2 teams. Yes, this defense in theory should not suffer another 10 plus or whatever it was injuries. I think 18 total between 18. Both sides of the ball. That was just awful luck. This defense was playing outstanding early on. For the price you have to pay for Jared Goff, like I don't mind taking some shares at him later if he falls to a value, but at his current cost, like I'd rather go get some of the guys we talked about earlier, like a Caleb or Fields.
Next interesting ADP, CJ Stroud. His ADP has not moved much since the NFL draft, and I'm surprised. He's still sitting at about quarterback 17. And here's where I stand on Stroud. Look, his rookie season was insane. And you've heard me say it was a 49ers-based offense. Then they ran a fullback. They kept one of the safeties had to come down, and he just bombed away, and he won. Well, last year they didn't do that, and defenses were playing too high, and Stroud struggled. Stroud is a learning curve for him. He wasn't ready for it. Stroud is a star quarterback. I don't question that. I was out on him last year, but I'm in on him this year. And it's not just because they added Jayden Higgins, Christian Kirk in trade, Jalen Noel. Those are 3 great ads. We don't know how the rookies will certainly pan out. We expect well of them. But again, that's an uncertainty. You have Nico Collins there, and I know health is an issue. But I believe that CJ Stroud was a learning year for him. Joe Burrow had a little bit of a learning curve at a point in his career. That's all it was. I think the fantasy community sees last year as Stroud's reality. I see it as a blip in the radar. I am now back in on Stroud. And if I need a second quarterback, or if I'm going to take a variance player like Justin Fields, I'm going to come back with CJ Stroud later. I am very in on Stroud as a second quarterback.
feel like I'm in on Stroud, not all the way in, because he was so good in 2023, and then we had a little bit of a regression. Yards per attempt down 1.2, overall yards down 0.2. This was a season where he did throw for more attempts, but let's be real, he also played a full season compared to 15 games in 2023. So there's a little bit more context there. They added a lot of weapons. So a lot of reasons to be in on CJ Stroud. But this is another situation where this is a deep position this year. And if you look at CJ Stroud's ADP, there's other quarterbacks that I might want to go for instead. Somebody like Dak Prescott, who I think we're going to talk about next.
And we are. Dak Prescott, let's not even cite his ADP. The trade for George Pickens was less than a week ago, probably 5 days ago. So that ADP has not set in yet. So we will find out more as time goes. Prescott will be drafted as a QB2. And I will say this. The line is not great. Hopefully the line's not a disaster. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be more like top 20, which is okay. You have CeeDee Lamb. Now you have George Pickens, and hopefully he fits into the team from a locker room standpoint, and you have Jake Ferguson. Now, beyond that, it's shaky. Jalen Tolbert, we kind of liked him before Pickens. He could step up and be somebody missed time. Given those three weapons, Dak Prescott, we have seen him put up very high-end fantasy seasons. We have also seen him have some injured seasons and some bad seasons. He has not been consistent. But with these three targets, I am completely expecting Dak Prescott to finish as a top 10, maybe better quarterback, but you're going to get him at a price way cheaper. Anthony?
Yeah, Dak is that other all-in quarterback. And I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm normally biased. This year I was completely out on Dallas. That George Pickens trade changes a lot of things for me. And obviously for the Cowboys. That defense, we talked about Chicago. It's a work in progress. They're going to have to throw. This defense isn't great in Dallas. They have some nice players, but it's still, especially year one under Eberflus, it's going to be a work in progress. So I expect this team to throw a lot. This running back room, it's very hard to trust. I would hope Jayden Blue turns into something and it's somehow at least a lateral move from last year, but I think they suffered a loss letting Rico Dowdle go. So this might be a team like we talk about, but they're going to have to throw early and often to stay in and to win football games. And now, I mean, for the first time since having Cooper and CeeDee Lamb earlier in his career, this is the best group of weapons Dak might have ever had, because even a few years ago in 2023, when he was the quarterback 4 points per game, it was a CeeDee Lamb show, and they had like Brandon Cooks. And Brandon Cooks at that point, he was a shell of himself. So, I mean, they could really build something nice offensively with Lamb and now George Pickens.
Now, last quarterback, especially in your super flex leagues, keep an eye out on Trevor Lawrence. Look, he has not been good. Last year, he played 10 games, 2,045 yards, so 204 yards per game, 11 touchdowns, like 1 touchdown per game, 60.6 completion rate, career low. Rushing production went down to 11.9 yards per game. He used to be in the 20s, so it has not been good. That said, his coaching has been horrific his entire career. Weapons on and off. Now comes in Liam Cohen, takes over the offense, and we know, look, last year he had high thoughts of him in Tampa. It panned out. He has Brian Thomas Jr. He has Travis Hunter. What do you think of Trevor Lawrence this year?
I'm buying back into Trevor Lawrence. He's had a few solid fantasy seasons. He's supposed to be that guy that we talk about, like Caleb Williams. Like, he was supposed to be that guy. It hasn't worked out up to expectations. Was it Doug Peterson and Press Taylor? And last year it was a complete, utter disaster in Jacksonville. But they have the weapons. We believe they have the talent in Trevor Lawrence, or he has the talent in Trevor Lawrence to become something special. And his price isn't bad. If you want to draft a quarterback, like Jim was saying earlier, throw that tandem together, Caleb Williams and one, Justin Fields and one. Trevor Lawrence is a nice and one who has a ceiling if everything works out.
Exactly. Hey, we want to thank our sponsors, Circa Resort and Casino. We want to thank everyone for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.